They say weddings are about love. But mine was about war. Not because I didn't love Nathan, I did. Not because he didn't love me, he did. But because someone decided our love was a stage for their ego. And that someone was my little brother, Todd. I should have known he'd try something. Todd had always been the center of every room, and if he wasn't, he'd break something or start crying until he was. My parents adored him. Worshipped him, really. He was born premature. Scary start. And they never forgot it. But somehow their fear turned into favoritism. And their favoritism into full-on delusion. It didn't matter what the event was. My high school graduation, he accidentally brought home a failing report card the same day and cried through dinner. My college awards ceremony, he brought a girl who fake fainted in the lobby. Abby's engagement party, he stood up mid-toast and announced he was moving to New York. He wasn't. Todd didn't just crave attention. He stole it. When I got engaged to Nathan, I didn't want a big wedding. A courthouse and a weekend away sounded perfect. But Nathan's family? Big warm present. His mom cried when she heard we were engaged. His dad called me daughter after the second dinner. So I caved. We planned something intimate. Elegant. A garden ceremony, sunset vows, an outdoor dinner under lights strung between trees. It was supposed to feel like a dream. And I was determined not to let Todd turn it into a nightmare. We invited my parents and siblings, out of obligation. Todd was supposed to be a groomsman. I didn't even fight it. But a week before the wedding, my best friend Jim pulled me aside. "Hey," he said, "you need to know something." He told me he caught Todd at brunch. Slipped receipt from a jewelry store. Confronted him. Todd tried to dodge, but Jim had seen the name of the place and the date. Todd was planning to propose to his girlfriend Lucy at my wedding. I confronted Todd directly. He denied it, of course. Said the ring was just something he was picking out. But I wasn't stupid. He had done this before. At our cousin Jenny's baby shower, he announced he was moving to LA. At Abby's bridal shower, Lucy announced her pregnancy without telling Abby first. Patterns. Always the same. So I told him he was out of the wedding party. He cried. He ran to our parents. They called me dramatic. Said I was being cruel. That family comes first. That was rich, coming from people who had never once put me first. Eventually, they made Todd promise not to do anything at the wedding. He gave some vague, sulky agreement. But my gut knew better. So did Jim. So we planned. Not just a contingency. Jim was good with logistics. And I was good at making people believe I was still that sweet, spineless sister they could ignore. We found a girl named Rachel, an actress, discreet and professional. I paid her half up front. Gave her a name, a story, and Todd's phone number. All she had to do, show up at the right moment, and set the grenade. Nathan didn't even blink when I told him. He tries anything, he said, we finish him. My husband, my partner in crime, in vengeance, in everything. The day of the wedding came. Sunlight through trees, champagne in hand, laughter floating on the breeze. I danced with my father, holding back tears. It was my moment. Then Todd moved. He crossed the dance floor with Lucy in tow. Dropped to one knee. Held up the box. Gasps. Flashes. He did it. In the middle of my father-daughter dance. He did it. And that's when I smiled. Because I knew what was coming next. The air was thick with shock. People whispered. Phones were out. Cameras pointed. Lucy gasped, hands over her mouth like it was the most magical surprise of her life. My father looked at me in horror, unsure if he should stop dancing or punch someone. And I didn't cry. Didn't scream. Didn't run. I smiled. Because the trap had already been set. Rachel arrived exactly 2 minutes later. She was striking, tall, sharp jawline, hair slicked into a sleek bun. wearing a tight burgundy dress and heels that clicked like a warning across the stone path. She didn't rush. She didn't panic. She walked with the calm of a woman on a mission. All eyes had been on Todd. Now they turned, one by one. And just as he slid the ring onto Lucy's finger, Rachel said loudly, "Wow, you really do have no shame." Gasps. Lucy turned, confused. Todd froze. Rachel stepped forward, eyes locked on Todd. "Did you think I wouldn't find out? That you could just ghost me after everything you said?" He tried to play dumb. "Who are you?" "Bad move." Rachel pulled out her phone. "You don't know me? Huh, weird. Then why are there 37 messages from you on here?" She waved the screen like a blade. Lucy reached for it. "What is this?" Rachel didn't wait. She tossed a manila envelope onto the table next to the cake. Text threads, voicemails, photos. Oh, and the sonogram. That last word hit like a punch. Sonogram. Lucy's voice cracked. Rachel nodded. 10 weeks. Congratulations, Daddy. Silence fell over the garden like a dropped curtain. Todd went pale. This isn't real. She's lying. Then why does she have your number? Someone whispered. Right on cue, Rachel pulled out her phone, dialed. Todd's pocket lit up. His own phone started ringing. Lucy turned and stared at him like she was seeing a ghost. "You said you were working those nights." Todd stammered. I don't know who she is. This is insane." Rachel stepped in closer. "Then maybe you'll remember this." She held up a photo from the envelope. Todd snatched it, tried to tear it in half. Didn't matter. The damage was done. Lucy didn't slap him. He didn't yell. She just slowly pulled the ring from her finger and dropped it into her champagne glass. It clinked like a funeral bell. "I hope it cuts your tongue when you try to drink your lies." Then she walked away, shoulders square, back unbroken, tears streaming. Todd looked around. No one clapped. No one laughed. And the best part? No one came to defend him. Not even my parents. They sat frozen at their table, mortified, mouths open. Rachel leaned in one last time and whispered something I'll never forget. "That's for ruining your sister's wedding. And trust me, this isn't even the worst part." Later that night, I found her at the back near the catering tent. Still calm. Still powerful. I handed her the envelope of cash we'd promised. She smiled. "You don't owe me anything," she said. "That was fun. But I paid her anyway. Because a woman who can deliver a public execution in heels? She deserves whatever the hell she wants." As the music restarted and the wedding picked back up, people looked at me differently. Not with pity. With awe. I hadn't screamed. I hadn't fought. I'd planned. I'd executed. And I'd protected what was mine. With elegance. With calculation. With fire. The wedding ended with applause. But not the kind that follows a kiss. The kind that follows a fire. When people realized the flames didn't touch them, but damn, they got to watch something burn. Todd didn't stay. Lucy didn't either. Neither did my parents. They left early. No goodbye. No congratulations. Just silence and scorched earth in their place. I should have felt sad. But I didn't. I felt free. For the first time in 35 years, I wasn't the peacekeeper, the too mature one, the one who let it go because he had it harder. Well, I was the one who struck first. And I wasn't sorry. The honeymoon was beautiful. Mountains, cabins, hot chocolate and cold hands, and the kind of silence that doesn't ache, the kind that heals. Nathan kept smirking at me like he'd married a secret agent. "I knew you were hot," he said, "but I didn't know you were dangerous." I laughed. "Oh honey, you've seen nothing." 3 days into the trip, I turned my phone back on. Mistake? Maybe. Messages poured in. The first was from Todd. "You ruined my life." Followed by, "You think this is funny? That wasn't just a prank." Lucy's not answering. Mom's crying. Dad's furious. Everyone's blaming me. Then, "Fix this." No. I didn't respond. I just sent one thing. A screenshot of the wedding venue bill. Caterers. For security. Total, $18,472.62. Then I followed it with, "You ruined my wedding. I simply restored balance. You owe me half. Venmo or check, I'm not picky." Walked. Next came the messages from my parents. My mom first. "How could you do this to your own brother? You embarrassed him in front of everyone. That was cruel." My dad followed with, "This wasn't the time for games. You humiliated our family." Notice something? No mention of what Todd did. No apology. No accountability. Just the same old playbook. Protect the boy, silence the girl. So I responded. One message. No fluff. "For 35 years, you told me to sit down and be quiet. To let him have the spotlight. You covered for him. You excused him. You never defended me. So for once I stopped protecting your favorite child. And now you finally see what happens when the daughter you ignored learns to fight back." Walked. Abby called 2 days later. I almost didn't answer. But I'm glad I did. Because unlike the others, she didn't yell. She didn't scold. He just said, "That was the most savage thing I've ever seen." I laughed. Too far. No, honestly, I think it was overdue. We talked for hours. About childhood. The favoritism. The way we both swallowed it like poison because he was fragile and we were strong. She told me something I didn't know. That Todd had tried to make a scene at her wedding too. Had to be talked down by her now husband. That he once showed up drunk to our cousin's graduation and claimed he was having a panic attack. Just to pull the spotlight. He wasn't sick. He was addicted. To being the victim. To being the star. I didn't feel bad anymore. I felt seen. Because when you grow up being taught that fairness means sacrificing yourself, that being the good daughter means silence, your rage festers quietly. Until one day it doesn't. One day it wears a white dress and smiles while your brother implodes in public. When we got back from the honeymoon, the first thing Nathan said as he carried our bags inside was, "So, what are we doing next?" I raised an eyebrow. "Next? You know," he said with a grin, "now that we've started our marriage with a little revenge, I feel like we should make it a tradition." I kissed him. And whispered, "Only if they deserve it." 2 weeks after the honeymoon, I ran into Lucy. It was accidental, or maybe the universe was just feeling theatrical. I was walking through the farmer's market, sipping coffee and pretending not to miss vacation, when I spotted her standing by the sunflowers. No makeup. Hair pulled back. And most telling of all? No ring. She saw me before I could turn away. I braced myself. Slap. Scream. Melodramatic tears. She walked over slowly. "Hey." That one word. Neutral. Come. It threw me. "Lucy." She took a deep breath. "You did that, didn't you? The girl. The envelope. The call." I nodded. No point in denying it. "Yes." "Thought so," she said. The timing was too perfect. Silence. Then she smirked. "Thank you." "Wait, what? You're not mad?" She shook her head. At first, yeah. I was humiliated. Felt like the rug got yanked from under me, in public no less. "That wasn't the plan. You were never the target." "I know," she said. "Just, at first I wanted to burn your whole life down. But then I realized, you gave me the one thing no one else ever did." "What's that?" "The truth." She told me what I didn't know. That Todd had cheated on her before. Twice. that she'd caught flirty texts, excuses, weird charges on his card. But every time she confronted him, he'd gaslight her. Told her she was paranoid, controlling, that she was just jealous of his friendships. She believed him. Because love does that. It makes fools of the smartest women. I thought if I got pregnant he'd settle down, Lucy said bitterly. I thought if I said yes to the proposal I could fix him. He doesn't want to be fixed, I said. He wants to be worshipped. She nodded. I see that now. And it took public humiliation for me to finally walk away. She paused, then added, I should hate you for that. But you don't. No, I don't. Because I think you saved me from wasting years chasing a version of him that doesn't exist. We sat on a bench near the honey stall. Two women who had both been burned by the same man, just in different ways. It didn't feel awkward. It felt like justice, like closure. I asked about the baby. I'm keeping him, she said, hand on her stomach. But he's not getting anywhere near him. Good. I'm getting a lawyer. Full custody. He can fight it if he wants, but it won't go well with the things I've kept. That caught my attention. Things. She smiled. Mysterious. Slightly wicked. Let's just say, your brother has a habit of sending things he shouldn't. And I have a folder. Several, actually. I almost asked if she needed help. But she beat me to it. If I send you something, do you promise to keep it safe? Why? Because one day I might need to bury him. Not metaphorically. I didn't flinch. Send it. That night I got an encrypted email. Dozens of attachments. Photos. Screenshots. Audio messages. One of them, Todd drunk calling Lucy, slurring about how he could have had better if his family didn't hate him. Another, a video from a bar. Him bragging about how he was going to sabotage my sister's wedding just to show her who matters. I saved everything. Printed it. Backed it up to the cloud. Twice. And then I poured myself a glass of wine and watched the video again. And I realized something. Todd didn't just try to ruin my wedding. He tried to make me small again. Make me the background character in my own damn life. But he failed. No. I held the match to everything he still cared about. They showed up unannounced. My parents. Standing on my porch like they hadn't just ghosted me for 2 weeks. No text. No call. No apology. Just two boomers with pursed lips and a moral lecture loaded like a gun. Nathan answered the door. Smiled politely. She's in the kitchen. Come on in. Then he walked straight past them, handed me the phone and whispered, It's showtime. I didn't offer hugs. I didn't fake warmth. Just poured 3 cups of black coffee and sat at the table like a courtroom judge. My mother went first. We wanted to talk face to face. About what? I asked. The wedding. The incident. You mean Todd proposing during my father-daughter dance? Or the part where I served karma with a side of performance art? She flinched. My dad coughed like someone choking on pride. What you did was calculated, he said. Cruel. No, what Todd did was cruel. I was just prepared. They exchanged looks. He's your brother, my mom said finally. There was the golden defense. Blood. Family. The unspoken rule that daughters must swallow humiliation for the sake of keeping the peace. I sipped my coffee. Funny how that line only ever applies to me. My dad leaned forward. We didn't come here to fight. We came here because Todd's life is falling apart. And he's lost his job. Lucy's blocking his number. He's living in his car. Actions meet consequences. We're asking you to help him. I did help him, I said with a smile. I helped him learn what happens when you treat your family like props. Silence. Then my mom dropped the real reason they came. He says you set him up, that you hired someone to lie about a pregnancy. I didn't deny it. Dad, I leaned in. She wasn't lying. That caught them. My mom's hand trembled slightly. What? Her name's Rachel. She's not just an actress. She's one of many girls Todd's been stringing along while pretending to be the victim. That's not possible. I pulled out my phone. Clicked open the file Lucy sent me. Frilled. Paused. Held it out. You might want to read that one slowly. It's from your son describing what he'd do if Lucy ever left him. Spoiler, it's not charming. My mom read in silence. Then closed her eyes. I didn't raise him like this. I laughed. It slipped out before I could stop it. Didn't you? Because here's the thing. They did raise him like that. Every tantrum they excused. Every lie they covered. Every time they told me to just let him have this one. Because he was sensitive. They didn't create a monster. They just never stopped one from forming. I stood up. You want me to help him? Fine. Tell him to get therapy. Tell him to apologize, not just to me but to Lucy. Tell him to admit that he is the author of his own ruin. And if he doesn't, my dad asked, then I send every file I have to his employer, the bar association he's been trying to get into, and to anyone else who thinks Todd, the charming younger brother, deserves a second chance. That's blackmail. No, I said calmly. That's what you raised. They didn't finish their coffee. They left in silence. And for once, I didn't feel like the bad daughter. I felt like the only adult in the room. Abby called that night. They stopped by here too, she said. Tried to guilt me into talking to you. Did you? Nope. I told them if they'd spent half as much time raising Todd as they did defending him, we wouldn't be cleaning up his messes as adults. I love you. I know. Later I watched Nathan sleep. Thought about the future. Kids maybe. A home where no one had to apologize for having boundaries. For expecting respect. For saying enough. Because this family, this one I'm building, it won't be built on silence. 3 weeks later Lucy called. Not texted. Not med. Told. The kind of call that vibrates your phone with weight. I picked up immediately. Is everything okay? Depends, she said. Do you still have that folder? All of it. Why? Because I'm taking Todd to court. And I want you to be my first witness. Silence. Not because I didn't know what to say, but because I felt seen. I wasn't just the sister anymore. I was the evidence. And I said what only a woman with nothing to lose can say. Tell me when and where. The case. Custody and harassment. Lucy had tried to go quietly. Tried to block him, move out, let him disappear like a bad memory. But Todd wasn't done. He sent letters. Showed up at her workplace. Called from unknown numbers. He didn't want the baby. He wanted the power. So she filed. Restraining order. Full custody. And added evidence of harassment and emotional distress. But Todd? He fought back. Claimed it was all fabricated. That she was bitter, jealous, and vindictive. The court date was set. And I got the subpoena like it was a party invite. Nathan offered to come with me. No, I said. This one's personal. I walked into that courtroom with my heels clicking like a countdown. Hair up. Back straight. And a purse full of receipts, literal and emotional. Todd was already seated. He wouldn't look at me. Good. Lucy sat on the other side. Still calm. Still sharp. He gave me a nod. And I returned it like a salute. The judge asked for opening statements. Todd's lawyer leaned into the character defense. Tried to paint him as a good man with a strained family dynamic. I almost laughed out loud. Then it was Lucy's lawyer's turn. And they dropped the bomb. We have witness testimony. We have screenshots. We have audio recordings. And we have a digital trail that not only confirms harassment, but demonstrates a pattern of narcissistic and abusive behavior. Then he looked at me. We'd like to call redacted to the stand. I walked up. Thorin sat down and told the truth. Not just about what Todd did to Lucy, but what he'd done for years. To me, to Abby, to our family. I handed over emails, phone records, the video from my wedding. The courtroom watched like they were glued to a Netflix series. And when I was done, even Todd's lawyer looked queasy. Lucy hugged me outside. Tightly. I thought you'd say no, she whispered. I almost did, I admitted. But then I remembered what it felt like. To have him take something beautiful and piss all over it. Thank you. No, I said. Thank you. For choosing to fight instead of disappear. 2 weeks later, the ruling came in. Restraining order, granted. Full custody, granted. Supervised visitation only, and only if Lucy agreed. Harassment charges, pending review. Todd didn't show up for the verdict. Coward. My parents called. He's going to lose his job, my dad said. Do you really want your brother to be unemployable? You raised a liability, I said. Now the world's just giving him his invoice. Walked. Abby sent me flowers. A card inside read, for every daughter who stayed silent too long. Now let them hear us. I cried for the first time in months. Not from pain. From release. From freedom. Because some women break under pressure. But me. I burned diamonds. It was Abby's idea. A weekend getaway. Just us. No weddings. No drama. No men named Todd. We owe it to ourselves, she said. To remember we're sisters first, not survivors of his nonsense. So we rented a cabin. Mountains. Wine. Fireplace. No cell signal. And for the first time in years we spoke like we were young again. We shared a bottle of red and old childhood stories. Laughed so hard I nearly spilled on the blanket. Abby curled into a ball from laughing at how I once threw a shoe at Todd for hiding my prom dress. God, she said. We were always just cleaning up his messes, huh? We were raised to. But we're done now, right? I looked at her. At her peace. At her fire. And I said, yeah, we're done. In the morning we made pancakes. Badly. Burnt edges, uneven circles. But we didn't care. Because something in us had shifted. We were no longer the background characters in someone else's story. We were the damn authors now. We made a pact that weekend. That we'd stop playing the peacekeepers. Stop answering guilt with silence. And if our parents ever dared to pretend none of this happened, we'd remind them. Gently. Or not. The night before we left, Abby asked, do you think he'll ever change? Todd. The ghost that wouldn't die. I thought for a moment. I think Todd only changes costumes. Victim. Here. Victim again. So no. No. But I also don't care anymore. That was the real answer. Not whether he'd grow up. Not whether our parents would see the light. But that we no longer needed them to. Back home, Nathan had turned our living room into a pillow fort. Candles everywhere. Warm food. Soft music. Therapy fort, he called it. I'm sorry, what? You go. You crush him. You testify. Then you go into therapy fort and let your nervous system reboot. I laughed so hard I dropped my keys. You're insane. You married this. I crawled inside the fort and cried. Not because I was sad, but because I was safe. Later that night, curled into his chest, I whispered, thank you for not trying to fix it. Just letting me handle it my way. You didn't need a hero, he said. You just needed someone who wouldn't stand in the way of your sword. I slept better than I had in months. And in the morning, I opened my laptop, found Lucy's folder, and sent her a message. Want help building your case for child support? I've got some things your lawyer will love. She replied one word: boys. And that's when it hit me. We weren't just cleaning up the past anymore. We were rebuilding the future. On our terms. In our voices. Without guilt. Without Todd. It was a Tuesday. Cloudy. Chilly. The kind of evening that smelled like wet pavement and unresolved feelings. I was folding laundry when it happened. That knock on the door. 3 sharp taps. No doorbell. I peeked through the window. And there he was. Todd. For a second my brain stalled. I hadn't seen him in person since the courtroom. He looked smaller. Not in size. In energy. The puffed up ego was gone. The boy who thought he could ruin my wedding and get away with it? Did. This version. A man with nowhere left to go. I opened the door halfway. Didn't invite him in. Just waited. Hi, he said, voice low. I raised an eyebrow. Why are you here, Todd? I've been staying with a friend. I'm looking for a job. I wanted to talk. About. Everything. I mean, what happened? I didn't expect things to go that far. I was stupid. I get it. But you didn't have to destroy me. I studied him. Not just his words, but the way he said them. Still no apology. Still not really owning it. Just a sad little speech. From someone who missed being adored. You didn't expect consequences, I corrected. I made a mistake. You made choices. Repeatedly. Okay, fine. I just want to fix things. With you, Lucy. With Mom and Dad. I laughed softly. Not bitter. Just done. You set fire to people's lives, Todd. And now that you're cold, you're asking for warmth. I said I was sorry. No. You said you didn't expect it to go that far. That's not regret. That's inconvenience. He looked away. Hands in his hoodie pockets. Scuffing his shoes on the porch like a scolded teenager. I'm not asking for money. Or a place to stay. Good. Because the only thing I'm offering you is clarity. He looked up. What does that mean? I stepped forward. Calm. Unshakable. It means you're not welcome here. Not in this house. Not in this life. Not in any narrative where I'm the villain for finally standing up for myself. He blinked. So, that's it. That's it. No second chance? You already used that and the third and fourth. Nathan appeared behind me. Silent. Thought. Todd saw him. Backed up a step. I just wanted to talk. And you did, Nathan said quietly. Now we're done listening. I closed the door. Not slammed. Just firm. Final. From the kitchen window, I watched him walk away. No shouting. No tantrum. Just silence. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel cruel. I felt clean. That night I lit a candle. One of the fancy ones from the honeymoon cabin. Sat with Abby on speaker. He actually showed up? She asked. Yep. And I told him the truth. That he's not the main character anymore. She exhaled. You know what that makes you? What? The author. It came in the mail. Not an email. Not a text. An actual letter. Envelope. Zip. Written in my mother's script. That impossibly neat cursive she used for birthday cards and guilt. Nathan brought it in and set it on the kitchen counter. You don't have to open it, he said. I know, I whispered. But I did. The paper smelled like lavender and control. It began exactly how I expected. My dear daughter. Already I knew. This wasn't an apology. It was a defense. She wrote that she had been thinking. That maybe they didn't always get it right. That parenting was hard. That Todd was a sensitive boy. that they tried to love us all the same. She acknowledged the wedding, sort of. We never expected things to spiral like that. We thought you were stronger than that kind of retaliation. And then came the line that made me stop reading. You always were dramatic when you felt ignored. I stared at those words. Not because they hurt, but because they didn't. Not anymore. Because she still didn't get it. Not then. Not now. This wasn't about drama. This was about decades of silence. About birthdays I shared with her tears for Todd's tantrums. About medals I hung alone because they were too busy bailing him out. About watching my parents teach me that my pain was less important than his inconvenience. I folded the letter back up. Didn't rip it. Didn't burn it. Just slipped it into the drawer next to the batteries and expired coupons. Because it had all the weight of something that used to matter, and no longer did. Later that night, Abby called. She wrote to me too, she said. Same tone. Same passive-aggressive martyrdom. Let me guess, I replied. We tried our best, and Todd needs you now more than ever? Word for word. We laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was over. That weekend I hosted dinner. Lucy came, belly round and glowing. Abby brought her partner. Nathan grilled on the deck like he was auditioning for a cooking show. At one point someone spilled wine. No one yelled. No one made it a thing. We just wiped it up, laughed, and kept eating. It was the kind of evening we never had growing up. Before bed, I opened the drawer again. Took out the letter. Flipped it over. Wrote 2 words on the back. Too late. Then I tucked it into a box marked for the record. Because history matters. But healing? That's mine now. 1 year later, I stood under a white arbor watching Lucy walk down the aisle. She looked radiant. Not because of the dress. Not because of the flowers. But because she was free. Her son giggled in the front row, sitting beside Abby. Nathan held my hand, whispered, "She did it." I whispered back, "We did." There were no speeches from parents. No guilt-laced toasts. No family members trying to hijack the moment. Just a small group of people who had crawled through fire and come out clean. Lucy kissed her husband, yes, a new man, and the crowd cheered. There was confetti. There was cake. There was peace. Later, under the stars, she pulled me aside. "You know what I realized?" she asked. "What?" "That I used to think survival was the end goal. But it's not. No. No. Joy is. Love is. The quiet is." I nodded. We had to burn it all down to get here. Worth it. I never sent a reply to Mom's letter. Todd never sent another message. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel the need to fix what was broken. Some things stay broken, because they were never meant to be carried this far. Abby and I started a new tradition. Every year on the weekend that was once my ruined wedding, we get together. Just us. Wine, candles. We talk about how far we've come. We light a candle for the girl we used to be. The one who swallowed silence and called it obedience. Then we blow it out. Together. I look at Nathan sometimes and wonder what would have happened if I'd married someone else. Someone quieter. Someone who didn't sharpen the sword with me. But then he does something like kiss my hand in the grocery store, or call me Stormbringer in front of strangers. And I remember, I chose right. The past doesn't visit me much anymore. When it does, it's faint. Like an echo in a house that's been remodeled. I don't need revenge now. I don't even need closure. I just need this. My life. My people. And a piece I built with my own damn hands. So here it is. My final chapter. Not a warning. Not a threat. Just a reminder. She who was once the shadow can become the storm. No. I am the weather.